February 2021. Dundee, Scotland. It's cold and gloomy outside. The COVID-19 pandemic is in full swing. 25-year-old Beny Lin and her 2-year-old daughter, Jelica, have mysteriously disappeared. The bodies of the mother and daughter were later found buried beneath the kitchen floor of a house in the town of Dundee. What the police uncovered was not just evidence of a murder, but traces of an unspeakable atrocity. Both were raped, murdered, and their bodies dismembered before being buried under old concrete. The murderer, Andrew Innes, was a man with a scholarly and successful appearance, known for his achievements in the tech industry. But behind this polished facade, he was a monster disguised as a man. Beny Lin was born in 1995 in Quezon, one of the most populous cities in the Philippines. She grew up in a family with 3 siblings. Due to financial difficulties, Beny Lin was the only one in her family who could afford to attend university. In 2015, Beny Lin met Lexington, a British man 40 years her senior, through a dating app. Lexington lived in Scotland, and despite the vast geographical distance, their love blossomed through daily conversations. Their relationship quickly progressed. In 2018, Beny Lin and Lexington held a wedding ceremony on Samar Island, Philippines. A month later, their daughter, Jelica, was born, doubling the family's joy. However, at this time, Beny Lin had not yet completed the paperwork to move to the UK with her husband. In August 2019, Beny Lin finally moved to the UK to reunite with her husband in the town of Bristol. The initial days were challenging, but Beny Lin's resourcefulness and intelligence helped her adapt quickly. She excelled not only as a mother, but also worked at a care home to earn extra income. Beny Lin even sent money back home to support her family in the Philippines. But such happy days didn't last long. Beny Lin and Lexington's marital life began to show cracks. Lexington became controlling and cold, unlike the early days of their relationship. This led Beny Lin to decide to leave her husband and move with her daughter to a small apartment on the outskirts of Bristol. Life as a single mother wasn't easy, but Beny Lin was determined not to give up custody of her daughter. She maintained close contact with her family in the Philippines, especially her sister. Every day they spoke on the phone, sharing life's joys and struggles. This connection became a source of motivation for Beny Lin to navigate her challenging days. In 2021, after finalizing her divorce, Beny Lin began seeking new opportunities in love. She joined a dating site where she met Andrew, a software engineer living in the town of Dundee, Scotland. Andrew, a 50-year-old man, came across as polite and caring. He had a past of being divorced and was living alone in Scotland. Beny Lin was drawn to his maturity and the promise of a bright future he painted. After days of online conversations, she decided to visit Scotland with her daughter, Jelica, and Andrew promised to pick them up on February 18th, 2021. On February 18th, 2021, Beny Lin and Jelica got into Andrew's car and left Bristol. During the journey, she joyfully video called her sister, sharing that she and her daughter were having a great trip. But that was the last time Beny Lin's sister saw her. The following day, February 19th, Beny Lin and Jelica disappeared. Beny Lin's small apartment in Bristol fell silent. Beny Lin's ex-husband, Lexington, came to visit but found no one home. Beny Lin's sister in the Philippines repeatedly called, but there was no response. On February 20th, 2021, Beny Lin's sister received a message from an unknown number. The sender, identifying himself as Andrew, asked, "Are you Beny Lin's sister?" Beny Lin met a man at a cafe. They might have met through a dating app. She and her daughter, Jelica, went to Glasgow with him. The message shocked Beny Lin's sister. She immediately replied, "Really? But why isn't Beny Lin answering calls? What did she say about this?" Andrew explained that Beny Lin and her ex-husband had numerous disputes over child custody, and fearing the police or others might search for her, she decided to turn off her phone and flee. Andrew's explanation didn't convince Beny Lin's sister. She thought, "If my sister had such a plan, she would have told me beforehand." Trusting her instincts, she asked directly, "Is my sister still alive?" Andrew replied calmly, "Scotland is a very peaceful place, with no crimes. Don't worry, Beny Lin is safe." But when she pressed further, asking, "Are you sure? What happened to my sister?" Andrew stopped responding. Andrew's silence only amplified Beny Lin's sister's worries. To reassure her, Andrew unexpectedly sent a short video showing Beny Lin smiling. However, upon closer inspection, Beny Lin's sister realized the video appeared to have been recorded a long time ago and didn't align with the present timeline. After receiving the video, Beny Lin's sister attempted to message and call Andrew but received no response. She waited patiently for 2 weeks, hoping Beny Lin would reach out. However, all efforts were in vain. Both Beny Lin and Andrew had vanished without a trace. On March 1st, 2021, unable to endure any longer, Beny Lin's sister decided to report her missing to the local police in Dundee, Scotland. Upon receiving the case, Scottish police immediately launched an investigation. However, they faced a significant hurdle. Beny Lin's sister had limited information about Andrew, knowing only his name and that he lived in Dundee. There was no address or any specific lead. Based on information provided by Beny Lin's sister, police discovered that Beny Lin and her daughter, Jelica, had left Bristol on February 18, 2021, with a man. They reviewed all traffic cameras along the route from Bristol to Dundee. After tireless efforts, they identified a suspicious car on video. Initial investigations revealed that the vehicle was registered to Andrew Innes, a 52-year-old man living in Dundee. Police promptly located Andrew's house at 21 Troon Avenue. When officers knocked on the door, Andrew slightly opened it and said, "My daughter is taking a bath and needs to get dressed. You can't come in right now." His furtive gaze and unusual demeanor aroused suspicion. Through the door gap, they spotted a child lying on a mattress in the living room. The surrounding furniture was disorganized, and the kitchen appeared unusually messy. Detecting suspicious signs, the police warned Andrew to cooperate and entered the house. Upon entering, they immediately noticed the irregularities. The furniture was chaotic and disorganized. In the living room, an old mattress lay in the middle of the floor, surrounded by scattered personal belongings. The kitchen area raised further suspicions. Part of the floor had recently been tiled, with fresh cement still visible. Nearby were construction tools, including a cement mixer, tiles, and a bucket of concrete. In the house, apart from Andrew, the police also discovered a 7-year-old girl trembling on the mattress in the living room. The girl identified herself as Emma. Her frightened demeanor and silence made police suspect she was a captive victim. When directly questioned about Beny Lin and Jelica, Andrew tried to maintain his composure and refused to answer. However, when interrogated about the unusual renovations in the kitchen and living room, under direct pressure from investigators, Andrew confessed, "I killed them. Beny Lin and Jelica are under the kitchen floor. I poured concrete over them." Andrew's cold confession stunned the officer present. He showed no remorse or regret, speaking as if it were a routine matter. In reality, he admitted guilt knowing he couldn't evade conviction once the police delved deeper into the investigation. It is rare for a criminal to confess upon first contact with law enforcement. Excavating the kitchen area was no simple task. Police collaborated with forensic experts, archaeologists, and engineers to ensure the bodies weren't further damaged. The entire process took over 2 weeks, shocking the local community. On March 19th, Jelica's body was the first to be found, buried under less than 1 meter of concrete. The 2-year-old girl's tiny body was interred with mud and cement. This heartbreaking discovery brought the investigation team to tears. Further excavation uncovered Beny Lin's body beneath Jelica. The 25-year-old mother's dismembered remains were wrapped in a nylon bag and covered with a blanket, showing bruises that indicated the violent abuse she endured before her death. Autopsy results revealed Beny Lin had a deep wound of 158 millimeters in her chest and several severe head injuries. Forensic scientists determined the cause of death was a combination of internal bleeding and forceful blows from a heavy object. Police immediately connected these findings to evidence seized at the scene. A 1.5 kilograms hammer found in Andrew's house had traces of the victim's blood. This was the weapon used to assault Beny Lin. Additionally, a kitchen knife was identified as the tool Andrew used to dismember the victim's body. Both victims' bodies showed signs of sexual assault. Police also discovered numerous used condoms at the scene. Later investigations confirmed Emma was not Andrew's daughter. She was another victim, abducted 2 weeks prior to fulfill his depraved desires. During interrogation, when asked why he murdered the mother and daughter, Andrew initially remained silent. He later offered a brazen explanation. Beny Lin continued communicating with other men through dating apps. "I couldn't tolerate her deceit." He admitted that his initial plan was to spend a weekend with Beny Lin and Jelica, but jealousy and rage drove him to act violently. However, his statement was dismissed by the police, as the evidence showed clear signs of premeditation. Andrew confessed to using a hammer to attack Beny Lin in a fit of anger. After she collapsed, he continued to use a samurai sword to inflict additional injuries. These actions proved that his intent was not only to kill, but also to desecrate the victim's body. Regarding Jelica, Andrew stated, "The girl wouldn't stop crying for her mother. I couldn't bear the sound." He admitted to killing her after 3 days of captivity. Andrew meticulously planned everything, from inviting Beny Lin and Jelica to his home, purchasing construction tools, to concealing his crimes beneath a layer of concrete. Why did he commit such heinous acts? Let's delve deeper into the nature of this killer. Andrew Innes, 52 years old, was born in Germany. He had no criminal record and was considered a talented programmer. He moved to Dundee, Scotland, at the age of 24 to study and later graduated from the University of Aberdeen. After graduation, Andrew began his career at Rockstar North, a prestigious gaming company. With his design and programming skills, he quickly became a key employee and a respected figure in the company. In the early 2000s, Andrew married a Japanese woman, and the family moved to Japan. They had 3 children. However, the marriage began to fall apart. Andrew and his wife divorced in 2019. After the separation, he returned to Scotland, living alone in a secluded house in Dundee. This marked the beginning of his descent into darkness. As an exceptional programmer, Andrew used his skills to create a sophisticated software program. This program was designed to collect data from 34 dating websites, specifically targeting women's profiles. He outlined the criteria for his ideal woman in an Excel spreadsheet. This spreadsheet later became crucial evidence, providing insight into the motives and methods of the perpetrator. During the police investigation, he didn't care about the women's age, profession, or appearance. What obsessed him was whether they had young children. Andrew admitted in his testimony that his true intention was not to abuse the women, but to access their children. He pretended to care, engage in conversations, and build relationships with single mothers solely to get close to their children. Beny Lin, unknowingly, became the perfect target when Andrew discovered her profile. He meticulously planned to lure her to his home in Scotland. This wasn't the first time he had committed such acts, but it was the most extreme case, leading to horrific crimes. Andrew's actions were likened to a wolf in sheep's clothing, using intelligence and technology to hunt his prey. His meticulous planning left the victims unaware until they were trapped in his deadly snare. On January 31st, 2023, the trial of Andrew Innes officially began at the High Court in Edinburgh, Scotland. The atmosphere in the courtroom was tense, as the gruesome details of the case were revealed to the public for the first time. The courtroom was packed with people, including reporters, curious citizens, and the victim's family. Beny Lin's sister traveled thousands of miles from the Philippines to witness the perpetrator face justice. Prosecutors opened with a short video showing Beny Lin and Jelica in happier times, creating a poignant contrast to the heinous crimes Andrew committed. Forensic experts presented their findings on Jelica's cause of death, revealing that the girl had been suffocated after enduring 3 days of Andrew's horrific abuse. Another critical piece of evidence was CCTV footage from a supermarket showing Andrew purchasing construction materials like cement bags and tiles shortly after committing the crime. This reinforced the premeditated nature of his actions. Andrew sat at the defendant's dock with an eerily calm demeanor. When questioned about his motive for the murders, he insisted that he acted in self-defense and that Beny Lin's death was an unfortunate accident. However, prosecutors refuted this claim by presenting testimony from Emma, the surviving victim. Emma recounted in detail how Andrew had assaulted her and used a samurai sword to kill Beny Lin in her presence. He then concealed the bodies of Beny Lin and Jelica under a layer of concrete. Emma's testimony left the courtroom in silence. Prosecutors highlighted the psychological trauma inflicted on the child, emphasizing that Andrew not only committed these crimes, but also deliberately inflicted irrevocable pain on an innocent child. Andrew continued to offer excuses, even claiming that he acted under hallucinations caused by medication and had no control over his actions. However, psychiatric experts dismissed these claims, asserting that he was fully aware of his behavior. Another shocking piece of evidence was the Excel file Andrew used to list potential targets from dating websites. Prosecutors concluded that Andrew was not just a murderer, but a depraved predator. He exploited intelligence and technology to prey on vulnerable single mothers, aiming to access their children. On February 6, 2023, the court convicted Andrew Innes of 2 counts of murder and child abuse. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with the possibility of parole after 36 years. Andrew was escorted out of court amid the angry shouts of the Scottish public. He continued to smile coldly, showing no signs of remorse. Following the trial, Scottish police announced support for Emma and Beny Lin's family to help them recover emotionally and reintegrate into society. Due to privacy concerns, Emma's name used in the video is a pseudonym. Her details were not disclosed. Nonetheless, the 7-year-old girl displayed immense courage by recounting the perpetrator's crimes. The Andrew Innes case has concluded, but its echoes remain, serving as a stark reminder that darkness can exist anywhere, even in places that appear most peaceful. This video has come to an end. Thank you for following this gripping story. If you found this video intriguing, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to catch more captivating stories. In the wake of Andrew Innes' trial, the community in Scotland and the rest of the world was left in shock and horror. The question of how a man could commit such horrific crimes against the most vulnerable, children and their mothers, was on everyone's mind. The media covered the case extensively, detailing the stories of Beny Lin and Jelica and the dark and disturbing world of Andrew Innes. The case raised important questions about online dating and the dangers of the internet. How had Andrew Innes used his technological knowledge and online platforms to prey on innocent victims? How could society make the internet a safer place, especially for children? These questions sparked heated debates in the public sphere and led to calls for greater measures in online safety and child protection. Beny Lin's family in the Philippines was devastated by the loss of their daughter and granddaughter. The memories of the video calls her sister had with Beny Lin during her last days haunted her constantly. The family felt a sense of relief that justice had been served, but the pain of their loss was deep and healing would take time. The community rallied around the family, offering both financial and emotional support. Emma, the surviving victim, faced a long and difficult road to recovery. The trauma she had experienced at the hands of Andrew Innes was profound and would leave scars that would likely stay with her for the rest of her life. Therapists and counselors worked closely with her to help her process what she had been through and move forward in a healthy way. Emma's bravery and resilience were an inspiration to those who cared for her and those who knew her story. Andrew Innes, in his prison cell, was left to face the weight of his crimes. While he maintained his cold and unremorseful demeanor to the outside world, he was in turmoil on the inside. The consequences of his actions and the pain he had caused would likely haunt him for the rest of his life. The justice system had done its part in keeping him away from society and preventing him from harming anyone else. The Andrew Innes case remained a reminder that darkness can lurk in the most unexpected places, behind seemingly normal lives and polished facades. It was also a warning that society needs to be vigilant and proactive in protecting its most vulnerable members, especially children. The story of Beny Lin and Jelica became a poignant part of the ongoing pursuit of justice and the efforts to prevent similar tragedies from happening in the future. As the years passed, the memory of Beny Lin and Jelica lived on in the hearts and minds of those who loved them and those who had been touched by their story. Foundations and charities dedicated to protecting children from abuse and providing support to vulnerable individuals were established in their honor. Their tragic deaths led to a positive change in society, continuing to make a difference in people's lives. And so, the Andrew Innes case took its place in the annals of history as a disturbing but important story about the depths of the human soul, the capacity for both good and evil, and the enduring search for justice. It was a story that should never be forgotten and should serve as a constant reminder for society to continue striving for a safer and more compassionate world.